Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Women Talking Money podcast. My name is Gretchen from Magenta Financial Planning, and today I'm joined by Sarah Jones. Sarah has spent over 15 years working within the recruitment sector, and in the past 15 years, she's started to specialise more and more in the accountancy sector in South Wales. She's recently set up a new venture, Morwell Talent Solutions, in the recruitment space, where she hopes to emulate previous successes in her last company and offer a bespoke service to both clients and candidates. So welcome, Sarah, and thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Gretchen.
So, Sarah, do you want to? I've given a bit of an introduction, and we spoke a little bit before we started recording about you and your business partner setting the new business up. So, do you want to just paint a bit more of a picture about that for people who are listening?
Yeah, absolutely. So we set up a new recruitment business called Morwell Talent Solutions, as you've already said. So myself and my business partner, Kerry Leith, we've worked together for 15 years and finally decided to go it alone. So seemed like the right opportunity and the right time for the two of us to do that. So we specialise in the accountancy and finance sector in South Wales. And as you rightly said, we're very much hoping to just emulate the success that we had in previous years, but doing it by ourselves.
And it's very, very new. So how are you finding working through all those starting a brand new business, and there's marketing and there's this and that and all sorts?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a bit of a baptism of fire, I suppose. Lots to learn, lots to take on board. We have been effectively operational. This is our third week, coming up to the end of the third week. But prior to that, we had the whole sort of setup time whereby we were doing, as you rightly said, the branding, sorting out our database, etc. And yeah, lots of things that take a lot more time than you anticipate them taking. But yeah, we're getting there, and we're getting there. So we're 3 weeks in, and thankfully we've already got a good number of job vacancies that we're working for on behalf of our clients that have followed us to the new business. So far so good.
Brilliant and really, really exciting. So congratulations, because it's a big
Thank you.
it's
Thank
a
you
big
very much.
thing.
It certainly is. I think, it is a very big thing. We've talked about it, the two of us, for probably about 7 years on and off. And to finally make that leap of faith, it feels good.
Excellent. Well, thank you for saying that you talked to us a little bit about money today, which is the topic of my podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So I normally start by asking people, what's their earliest memory of money, or what did they learn about money, from their household as they were growing up. So what's your story like?
To be honest with you, I can't really remember when I was younger talking to my parents or siblings about money in any great detail, but I suppose my earliest memory of money would be getting some cash out of my building society and going to Woolworths and buying pick and mix. I think it's not very exciting, but yeah, that's probably one of the earliest memories I have.
And so you remember doing that, though, specifically like from like an ATM and with
No,
your
you'd have
money,
to go
or
in those days. You remember we used to have one of those little books that they would write sort of
passbook?
the
Yeah.
debit and credit. Yeah, there was no sort of bank cards or anything like that. No, not what. Unfortunately, I'm showing my age here, but I'm sure there were bank cards, but not for the minimal amount of money that I had in my account. So.
And I think they do
that's
that a lot for children's savings, like there was a passbook rather
yes.
than, absolutely.
You probably got some sort of toy or something for joining up the Halifax or, I don't know, Lloyd's, whoever it was back in the day.
Yeah, that's a topic of conversation with people quite often, that they can remember that you were almost incentivized to save by some gimmick that
Exactly.
existed at the bank.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah, I think now they do it with students for travel or free travel cards or I don't know, sort of like a huge overdraft facility.
Yeah, indeed. So you remember going to Woolworths, spending your pennies. You had Woolies and the pick and mix.
I know.
What about then maybe if you can't remember much else about that sort of conversation piece at home, what about like maybe the first job that you got? Like what was your did you work as, a teenager or
Yeah, I worked as a teenager in the holidays. I did various different jobs. So waitressing. I really didn't enjoy waitressing at all. Yeah, I didn't enjoy that side of things. But I remember I worked in a card shop as well for a couple of summers. And I really loved that. I don't know why. I had a bit of a fascination with the till. I loved the sound of the clinking on the till. So yeah, I enjoyed that. But yeah, the waitressing, I wasn't. It was.
interesting that the till like held that kind of fascination?
I know. I've recently worked in my last company with a girl who was absolutely obsessed with cash tills as well. So I don't know. Maybe it's the pinging noise of the register opening. Who knows?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, completely different then to how it is now because so often people aren't using cash. And it did give you, I mean, I used to work in a chemist and do the same thing that till, you had to sort your change and do the maths to, or at least work out how you were going to give that change.
Yeah,
And now you're really just tapping your card so much.
just a quick ping.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, in regards to, let's think about a little bit about now then and how you manage things now. So do you regulate, do you like use a budgeting system to look after your money? Do you have a specific thing you've adopted to do or learnt to do
Um,
about money?
I love Excel. I know that sounds a bit sad, but I love Excel. So you can't beat a good spreadsheet for budgeting. I suppose lots of apps, banking apps these days, especially the sort of new banks, if they're allowed to be called banks, the likes of Revolut, Monzo, they have really good tools on them, don't they, to analyze your spending. But yeah, I'm a bit more old school. I like a spreadsheet of money coming in, money going out, all the sort of, the monthly outgoings. So that's kind of my way of keeping control on things.
And do you do that sort of on quite a regular basis? Like you keep a really good, like tight, I'm interested about how people do it. So, because some people are a lot more chilled about it. Some people are very, nope, I'm going to keep it up to date, understand where I am.
I mean, I check my bank account pretty much every day. I'm in that habit of when I'm having my breakfast to go in, check. I've got, bank account now for the company as well that I go in and check and, check urgent whilst I'm checking my urgent emails. So, yeah, that's just the habit that I've got into that pretty much every day. Even if I'm abroad on holiday, I still do it. Just want to know what's coming in and obviously what's gone out as well.
And I mean, talking about the business, is it, do you, with yourself and your business partner, are you applying a similar logic that you've learned by managing personal money to how you're thinking about business money? Like
Yeah,
what's kind
I
of
like to
going
think
there?
I like to think we're both sensible individuals. We've got a good handle of money. One of the things we really want to make sure, especially in the early days of the business, is to make sure we keep a really good handle on our costs. And again, we've with the assistant of our accountant, who's fantastic. We're doing that already. We're setting up, I hope, best practice to make sure that we don't overspend. Obviously, we've both made big investments into the company to get it off the ground, and we want to make sure that not only are we paying ourselves back in due course, but you know being able to pay ourselves a good salary as well.
Yeah, and in those early times, being lean is going to be so vital, isn't it, to that cash
Yes.
flow?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, as I said, we've got a really good accountant who's given us great advice, and yeah, we've set up lots of spreadsheets, but hopefully going to start incorporating those into different accounts packages as well to make them easier to use going forward. But yeah, I think you're right. Probably the same sort of common sense. If you haven't got money, you can't spend it or shouldn't be spending it. But when you have got it, then maybe making investments into certain things. For us at the moment, the biggest investment has been our database and our advertising as well, which recruitment advertising is quite expensive these days.
Yeah, I can imagine. And interestingly, you said a moment ago, applying that same logic of not spending what you don't have. It leads me quite nicely on to a conversation around debt, I guess, or debt management, like how you approach that. And I'd be quite interested to understand like how you feel about debt, both personally, but also thinking about the business, investing in the future, thinking about how that could look. Because whilst I feel always like my business and me become kind of very into this, we're so intertwined. The reality is we might need to take slightly different approaches to
Mm-hmm.
how we deal with things. So, what do you think around debt and
Well, we don't have
how
an
that could either be positive or negative?
I think in the grand scheme of things in life, debt isn't that scary, particularly as long as it's manageable debt and debt that you can cope with. As a business, we don't have an overdraft facility because we don't feel the need at the moment that we need to have one, that we need to be in debt. The only debt is that the business is kind of indebted to myself and Kerry for us to take out the startup costs. But yeah, as I said, that's something that had to happen in order to facilitate the setup. So I don't find debt particularly scary on a personal level. It's just making sure that you're able to afford and manage that debt.
And often and understand what the debt actually is. Half the
Yes.
battle is like knowing what it is, understanding the rates that you're paying, getting best deals,
Hmm.
and the same applies if you are, for any business that has to borrow money for something, be
Yeah.
that borrowing to expand or anything like that. I guess it's more about, the message is, do you understand it, or is it
Yes. Yeah,
you can
absolutely.
sensibly have a repayment plan?
Exactly. And maybe that's something that people don't fully understand. I suppose, the obvious one is credit card debt. We all know about the exuberant interest rates that those companies can charge if you don't pay it back on time. So, yeah, that's one that maybe I would find scary. But thankfully,
And
I've tried to pay that off every single month on my credit cards anyway. So,
I was going to say, so that's been your approach personally, is that, if you do
yeah,
use
I
a
mean,
credit card, it's repaid, or at
yeah.
least within a reasonable time frame.
Yes, I suppose, your finances and debt change throughout your life, don't they? So in my younger days, maybe that wasn't quite as achievable to pay, things off. But as you get older, hopefully, it makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. Your stages of your life are very dramatically different. And I think one thing about debt is that, and I like the fact that you said, I don't find debt scary as long as I know that I've got a strategy or it's achievable to kind of
Yes,
manage.
I
Because
think,
quite a lot of people are really, they just want to avoid it. And sometimes I feel like there are benefits, certainly, even if you pay for your holiday on your credit card, start to build up a credit score, and all of those things, that if you don't have any of it at all, then you
mm,
sometimes struggle in different ways.
yeah, as long as it's manageable and you're not having sleepless nights about it, then yeah, a little bit of risk can sometimes lead to reward, I suppose.
Yeah,
Yeah, hopefully.
absolutely. Well, yes, if all the plans come to fruition.
Exactly.
So, what about thinking about, maybe if you could describe something like your first major purchase that you can remember thinking about buying with your own money, like when you were earning? I'm quite intrigued to understand thoughts around that or memories around that.
My first major purchase was buying my first flat. I lived in London, so I didn't go down that route of buying a car. because it was just completely pointless, even in those days, to have a car in London. So yeah, the first purchase was a flat. So yeah, a big commitment.
And how did that feel to be able to get to that? Do you remember how you felt about getting that
Uh,
first property and getting your keys?
Super excited, but then yeah, really, really excited. It was lovely. It was tiny, my flat, but I think then the reality of it's not just the flat, it's everything else that you have to buy to go in the flat. So, for example, a bed, a sofa, I didn't have any of those things. So, yeah, I spent a fair few months sleeping on a friend's mum's mattress in the bedroom until I could afford it to buy a bed. And so yeah, it was exciting and I loved it, but yeah, it was a big commitment, but one I'm glad I took at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in London. Like
Yeah.
I mean, thinking about it now, it's like a massive achievement. Most
Yeah,
people
I probably wouldn't be
can't
able
do
to afford
that,
it now, but yeah, all those years ago I could. It hadn't gone through the roof, London property prices at that time. So yeah, I was lucky.
And do you think that your approach to money, I mean, we alluded to something a little bit earlier about different stages of life and about the conversation we're having about debt, but do you think your approach to money, how you handle it or how you spend it, I mean, there's no, just generally has changed as you've got older?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think when you're young, you're far more carefree and probably a bit too frivolous with money. I probably wasted an awful lot on things that I actually didn't really need, overconsumption of clothes, shoes, bags, whatever it was that just, yeah, weren't really necessary. I think as you get older, for many different reasons, well, at least I do. I think, do I actually really need that? Um, Although it's far easier to buy things these days as well, isn't it? You can be sat in bed online shopping, and quite easily spend a fortune. So, yeah, I've learned to rein things in a little bit more.
And do you think that's because commitments in life are bigger and there are other things that require some of that money? Or do you think it is like, I don't know, a more conscious decision making around
Yeah,
not
probably.
consumerism?
Yeah, just probably, yeah, just being a little bit more sensible and thinking, well, I've got one black bag like that. Do I really need something that's kind of similar to it, but a little bit different? I probably don't. So, yeah, it's just, yeah, probably think about things a little bit, a little.
Absolutely. So what about, I guess I'd like to know about how you're balancing your desire to, well, in your situation as well, you've lent money to the business, you're running this new business. We all know we've got to be sensible about decisions for the future, but we all want to live our lives and enjoy our money.
Mhm.
What's your sort of approach thinking about that?
Ooh. Um, I don't think there's been an approach really set in stone as such. It's probably just goes back to being a little bit sensible. As I said, Carrie and I like to think we've got a little bit of common sense, the two of us. So living within our means, saving. We've been fortunate enough to be earning, decent salaries, so we've been able to save. And I said, and that's why we've both been able to invest into the business, and hopefully we'll reap the rewards of that in the future. I don't think it's been sort of a conscious decision, particularly, anything particularly set in stone. Just being sensible, forecasting, planning, a good Excel spreadsheet again. um, yeah.
And do you think that, I mean, given where you're at and the fact you've had to invest this money and then now you're working and as you said, hopefully we'll be able to pay ourselves a, decent wage. I was about to say, do you feel at the moment that you've got a good balance, but I don't know how, it's a bit
Um,
of an unfair question at a
yeah,
3 week into a brand new business.
exactly. Yeah, we're so early in, but I think we're so early into the evolution of the company that it's hard to tell. But we're both really, really confident about our abilities to, to perform, to bill, to make money, to pay ourselves back the money that we've both put in. That yeah, we're both quite confident that we'll be able to do that within a relatively short period of time. But I think it's also for us not just about, it wasn't just about our ability to earn. That's not the reason why we set up by ourselves. It was an ability to have our own decision making process, plus also maybe having a little bit better work-life balance as well. So yeah, it's probably a few different reasons.
And do you have a, a, a sort of any fear around money? Do you have, I mean, my question usually is, what's your biggest fear around money?
I suppose not having any. I'd hate to think that I didn't have any money and that I'd have to sell my house, and I think that's yeah, not having money. I wouldn't want to be in that position to have to um, think, okay, so it's the bank holiday weekend this weekend. I have no money, therefore I can't go out. We can't go out for dinner. We just have to survive on the food that's in the fridge. I mean, I have done that before in the past when I was much, much younger, whereby, you've been waiting for the days ticking by for your paycheck to arrive. But yeah, I like to think I'm kind of out of that. Probably more to do with my age rather than anything else.
Age, experience, yeah, working hard to get to where you're at, not just an age thing. But yeah, I completely resonate with like not wanting to be
Yeah,
back
not one.
there.
Yeah, when you think you've worked hard, and not just myself, but my husband as well, worked hard for what we have, and that what we've been able to provide our family, and for all of that to go, would be my worst fear in terms of money, anyway.
Well, I'm sure your practical approach will make sure that doesn't happen, and
Hope
that
so.
you find the right balance.
Hope
Um,
so.
yeah, and so you mentioned your husband and things, but do you have? Are you both quite aligned with where you are with like money over the year? Or do you feel you've become aligned about money as
Yeah, I
your
think
relationships develop?
we're pretty much aligned, yeah, on most things. I like to think he might say different, but yeah, I think we're pretty much aligned. Although I like to think he spends a lot more money than me, but he might think differently.
So do you have a pretty open conversation when you're talking about money with him?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
And is it
Definitely.
something you feel like you've always had, or have you had to like work on that?
No, not particularly. It's always been fairly open, really, since we've been married, and over time, you start sharing bank accounts, or I don't know, maybe again when you get to our stages in life, you start talking about your your the future and wills and things like that. So you have to, talk about money, I suppose, in a little bit more
Yeah, and be
detail
open
then.
about
Yes,
what could
absolutely.
happen and what the future, yeah, what you
Yes,
want the future to be like.
absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm interested to know if you talk to friends about money at all.
Particularly, no. Um, Not really. No, it's certainly not a conscious thing. Um, I mean, no, not really.
It's not something that comes up, and it's really interesting. I wonder if that's I've talked to other people about this before as well, about whether that's a little bit of a life stage thing as well. Like when you're younger and you were buying that first flat, you were probably talking to
Yeah.
other friends were getting mortgages, and
Yes.
sharing details of first jobs and things, and
Yeah.
now maybe it's a little
Salaries.
bit more stable, and doesn't need to be discussed as much. Or
Yeah. I mean, I presume in my friendship group, it's obvious to, sort of like the close knit ones of us who is or who has a lot more money than potentially other people have less, or friends who are or have gone through divorces, so their financial situations have changed as well. But no, it's not a conscious thing that we would actually talk about particularly anyway.
It's really interesting though. So I guess I'm really interested to know that or think about more is that maybe we bring those things up when things happen, like there's a life change, and you talk to your friends about that, if there's a divorce or if someone has a
Yes.
bereavement, or it's that then those times when those conversations happen more, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I suppose that, something like a divorce, if you've been married to somebody for a long time, it has huge financial implications. So, yeah, that's probably the most obvious time that it's come up in conversation with friends. But generally speaking, not really, no.
No. And I think that's normal. I mean, it's all like this taboo around talking about money. We
Yeah,
don't just go in and go, well, how much did that cost you? Or what did you spend on your holiday? Do you know what I mean? We
probably.
just don't do it.
Yeah, it's probably a very British thing, isn't it? I'm sure if you were interviewing somebody maybe over in America, they might have a different take on things, but it's a very British thing, isn't it, to not talk about salaries and wealth and money. You keep it close to your chest.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing you mentioned was about wills, when you talk about your will and you start thinking about that with your partner, I think that opens up a whole different level of conversation. And
Yes, yeah, yeah. What
as we
what
get
you're
older, we're going to experience that as well with family, friends. I know when I've had a friend who's lost their parent, then there's a whole different conversation that suddenly happens, because they're having to deal with might be having to deal with loads of stuff as well, like from
yeah,
from their
yeah.
from their parents.
Yeah, so I don't suppose there's ever a nice time to talk about something like that. But again, I'm quite an organized person. I like to think anyway. So yeah, better to be prepared than not, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I think it's really important we talk about wills and we make sure, because quite often, I meet people all the time. It's one of our key questions on any kind of initial meeting that we'd have.
Mm,
But a lot of people, I mean, the statistics are mad about, not writing wills. So,
yeah,
um, yeah, it's really, really important.
yeah. It doesn't make sense to me why you wouldn't,
But it's amazing the amount
particularly,
of people
but
who don't.
yeah, I can believe it. I can believe it, but it just doesn't make the sense to me as to why you wouldn't do it. But there you go. I think some people just don't like talking about their immortality, perhaps.
And there's a difficult conversation, but one and tricky. And certainly if anyone's listening and they're thinking, oh, I don't know if my mum and dad have got a will, or I haven't got one myself, I think it's really important that
Mm,
you don't have to talk about money with your parents if you don't want to, but at least ask, is everything aligned, and is everything in place, and can I help you get it in place if they haven't, because
absolutely,
that's really important.
definitely.
Yeah. So can you think about some financial advice you've received from someone? It doesn't have to be an advisor, it could be just anyone, like a peer or anyone that you've received over the years that stuck with you.
I've probably had loads of really rubbish advice over the years. No, oh goodness. I suppose the obvious one is just, God, I'm going to sound like I'm an accountant now, but it's just saving and putting money into your pension, because, we've just talked about death, but the other side of that is you could live a very, very long life. And we just want to make sure that you're able to live a good life as well. And if that means living to 90, 95, 100, we can't survive on thin air, can we? You do have to have a savings pot or a good pension to be able to draw on. So yeah, that's probably the best advice I've been given. Just put a load into your pension as much as you possibly can. And from a really, really young age as well. If you're starting to do it when you're 40, you've probably got a lot of time to catch up. You haven't got much time to catch up. Whereas if you start it from a very young age, I would imagine that compound interest has a big effect.
Absolutely. And I love your answer because it's a very financial planning and accounting answer, but I couldn't agree more. And it's we have to all be very serious about the fact that the state will not provide everything we need,
Yeah,
and we need to think about that. But also the tax relief as a business owner of putting money in to a
absolutely. Yeah,
pension is amazing. So we
yeah,
should all, and people can get really scared about pensions, and I just think it's got to be viewed as another, one of many different ways that we should be thinking about our finances and planning for the future. But as you say, yeah, I mean, I deal with people who, retire at 60, and then potentially you've got 30 to 35 years where,
yeah,
and you might retire earlier than that.
yeah.
That you've
So
got to fund.
you got to account for it because as you said, you can't rely on the state to fund you. Yeah.
I love that. I think it's that bit was very good financial advice. I'm sure we all get
Maybe
given
I'm in the wrong
rubbish
job.
financial
Maybe I
advice
should
as
be a
well.
financial advisor or an accountant. Yeah.
Well, the reality is that yes, I guess your experience with accountancy professionals, and
Hmm.
if you've got yourself a very, very good accountant as well, is that they know the tax benefits of
Yeah, he's
doing that
great.
quite considerably. Yeah. So can you think about, we'll do a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up. So can you think about something like a joyful money or joyful financial experience that you might share?
Um, I mean, for me, well, the one thing I love spending money on is holidays, travel. I absolutely love that. And yeah, that's what I like. That's what I like spending my well-earned money on, I think, is travel. Um, and having that experience, whether it's just, going away for a weekend with friends or away with my husband or son, that's what I really enjoy, is the experience of going to different countries, seeing different cultures, eating different food, drinking different wine. Yeah, sitting on a different beach. That's my thing, is travel. And I hope to be able to do that even when I'm retired. So that's the plan.
Is there one trip that you would tell me about that, you can look back and go, oh my God, it was so worth that hard
Um,
work to be able to afford to be able to go and do it?
we were lucky enough to go to the Maldives last year, which was amazing. I really enjoyed the Maldives, but just I also went a couple of maybe a month ago now. Just my son and I went for a long weekend in Copenhagen and absolutely loved that as much as I loved the Maldives. So yeah, just new experiences, I think, is what I enjoy. Just going to different places, different foods. Um, yeah, just traveling, that excitement of packing your bag and yeah, getting to the
Creating memories
airports.
of
Yeah,
new places. Yeah.
yeah, I don't really, yeah, that I love travel. Yeah, that's my one thing. I hope to be able to do that. I mean, I've never been on a cruise, but is that the thing you do when you're really old? Go on cruises? Maybe I've got that to look forward to.
I mean, plenty of people who aren't old also enjoy cruising, but
Oh
I
yeah,
get what you
sorry.
mean. No, I
Yeah.
get what you mean. Like, and yes, I think that it's an easier travel alternative as you get
Yes.
older
Yeah.
to experience lots of things. But
But yeah,
yeah,
that's the
it's
one thing.
I get told all the time I should go on a cruise. Gretchen, you'd love it. You'd love it. And I can't at the moment think of anything worse.
No, nor me, not at the moment. But if I'm still hobbling around at 90 odds and my
That's
knees are
the way to
giving way,
do
I
it.
might
Yeah.
prefer it then. Yeah, but yeah, not at the moment.
Excellent. Good. Okay. So, final question. What does financial freedom mean or look like or feel like to you?
Um, oh goodness, what does it? I think it's just not having worries, really, isn't it? Not having any particular, as I alluded to earlier, being able to go to sleep at night, not having to worry about letters coming through your door or whatever it may be. Um, just having that freedom to be able to, if I wanted, go on a nice long haul trip, or a short trip, or even if it's just going away with a couple of girlfriends to West Wales for a long weekend. Yeah, it's just being able to do things without having to say no too often, I suppose. But yeah, financial, I think for me is the main thing is just traveling. I love that. So yeah, that's probably the key one for me. But also hopefully not having my life change too much as and when I retire in the coming years as well. I think that's another thing that I wouldn't want to necessarily retire and think, oh God, now I've got to sell the house because I can't afford it, or can't go away, can't eat out anymore, that type of thing. Can't, enjoy time with family and friends and, take other people out for dinner or whatever it may be. So yeah, just being able to carry on my life as I do at the moment.
And free from worry.
Yeah, stress, worrying about, yeah, I've had that before in my life, and it's not a good place to be in, I don't think, mentally. So I'd rather not have it again.
Well, listen, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation,
Well,
and
thank
thanks
you.
for taking the time
Lovely
today.
chatting to you. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. Bye.